I was listening to the story about, it was a story of a family in Washington, and the little boy called the Bigfoot the Cowboy Man. And he had, apparently it had made an effort to steal this kid. And it hit me. My children were in that playpen behind me with nothing but a mosquito net over them. It could have crept up behind me and taken both of my children, and I wouldn't have known.
Father just got like a Mustang or something from Wyoming, okay? He had it out in the corral because he couldn't put it in the barn in the stalls with the other horses. It would kick and made all the other horses nervous. Had a Seminole Indian working the horse, trying to break it every day. So they had it out in the corral. This skunk ape snuck up behind this horse and grabbed it on its hind quarters. This particular horse kicks out, jumps over the corral, runs into the pasture, to get away. At this point, the rancher's out there just blasted away with the dirty. Skunk ape runs into the swamp.
I went up there one day after that, or 2 days after that. I went up there and sat in the silence up there, and I'm telling you, man, it was free. It was crazy. There was a crazy vibe up there still. I did what I could to kind of get things under control, but I told her, I said, you need to get off this property. I feel like no matter how strong you are, it's almost like standing in the ocean. You can't stand still without moving your feet. You're going to get knocked over eventually, no matter how strong, whatever. You can't withstand a barrage of weird spiritual energy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Paranormal Odyssey. Hope everyone is doing well out there on this Friday evening. Let's see who we got hanging out. I am fresh back from Panama City. Got back in last night. Had an awesome time with Jordan and Scarlett and a couple people in Jordan's family. Had a great week. It was awesome. I hated to come back, but here I am. All right, tea time with Tiffany, the moderator extraordinaire. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being here as always. Miss Naoma Finn, y'all know how I feel about Naoma. Thank you, ma'am, for hanging out. Also, Miss Sandra Piper, can always count on Sandra. Thank you, ma'am. Kelly Shaw, thank you for hanging out. She has been the last few episodes. She's very active in the chat too, so thank you very much, Kelly, for hanging out. And there are some others watching that haven't commented yet. Thank you guys so very much. Those of you that will catch it live tonight, those of you that will catch it later, I certainly appreciate it. As you guys, hey, dude from Texas, what's up, buddy? You guys can tell I am flying solo again tonight. Lisa took off last week, and tonight she just started that new movie. Just finished one up and started a new one, and she texted me earlier, said it was kicking her tail. So, yeah, she's taking a couple weeks off, and she's still working, so keep her in your thoughts, I guess. But it'd just be me tonight, guys. Before we get to our guests, let's do all this good stuff. If you don't mind, please hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. We would appreciate it. If you've had an encounter and would like to come on and share it with me and Lisa, or just me, be happy to talk to you about that. First step is shooting me an email. You can get me at wayne@paranormalworldproductions.com. If you've had an encounter, or if you are like tonight's guest, gentleman we have on, a paranormal investigator, 15 years under his belt. So I'm excited to get him on it and talk about some of that. But yeah, if you've had an experience with the weird, we'd love to talk to you. If you have any questions for the guest tonight, Mr. J.J. Johnson, he is backstage. If you have any guests for him, if you have any questions for him, please feel free to ask those at any time. But as always, guys, please put those in caps. Just makes it easier to see them. And since I'm by myself tonight, I need all the help I can get. So yeah, feel free to ask questions. Just put them in caps. Also, I want to ask everyone to head over to paranormalworldproductions.com. Check out our website. show some support to the shows. This one, Sasquatch Odyssey, True Crime Odyssey, Kentucky X Files, those guys over there. And check out the website. We would appreciate it. All right, guys. Want to remind everyone I've talked a little bit about, signing the contract to start sharing the show over on FM station WDJY 99.1 FM radio station in Atlanta, and that happens this week. Actually, this coming Thursday will be the very first episode. My time slot is Thursday mornings at 9 o'clock. Come on right after a sports talk show, which I think is perfect. I think I'm going to fit in really, really well there. I'm excited about getting that going. And you can listen online, but no, you guys are already listening, so I appreciate that. But yeah, just letting you know that be going over there starting this Thursday. So I'm nervous about it, excited about it, and hopefully we'll have a long relationship with those guys. Looking forward to it. All right. I think I got it all out of the way. So if y'all are ready, I'm just going to go ahead and bring Mr. JJ on. JJ, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing very, very well. Thank you very much for taking the time to come and hang out with us and share some stories. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I always like to talk to others interested in the paranormal and share some of my stories. So I'm always down to have a little chat.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. You've been doing this about 15 years, you said, right?
I have, yeah. I mean, I co-founded my group, West Virginia Paranormal Investigations, back in 2007. So it'll be 16 years later this year. And I had a lot of crazy experiences, a lot of crazy adventures over the years. So, yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's been worthwhile.
Yeah. Tell everybody how you got your start. Like, what got you interested in this topic?
I don't have a super cool origin story like a lot of people have, but it's just always been a lifelong interest of mine. My mom grew up in a house that she swears was haunted. Unfortunately, it got torn down when I was a baby, so I never got the chance to experience any of that. But she would tell me stories about hearing footsteps, and she would be upstairs in bed, and her mom would be yelling upstairs for her to get back in bed, and she's tucked under the covers, terrified, hearing the footsteps go around. My dad, when they were dating, he lived like 5 miles away, and he would literally walk home at like 2 or 3 in the morning instead of staying in that house. So hearing stories like that always piqued my interest as a kid. Never really did anything with it, like read stories and things like that, the telltale stories for West Virginia hauntings and things like that. And then I got to college, was right about the time when ghost hunters kind of came onto the scene. And I realized, oh man, people actually go out and investigate this. I really didn't even know that was a thing. And at that point, I was like, oh man, I gotta explore this a little bit more. I put a post out on Facebook, which was like brand new back then, but that was the big social media. So my cousin Rich, who actually had a near-death experience, which got him interested in the paranormal. His story is way cooler than mine, but he reached back out and said that he'd always had an interest in it and asked what I was wanting to do. And I was like, I don't know. I just kind of want something I want to explore. And we decided to found West Virginia Paranormal Investigations, and I've been going strong ever since. He stepped away since then, but I'm still going strong.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And most of the people, like you alluded to, most everybody that gets into this had something happen to them. But I'm with you, man. I started my organization, Manimal Research. We look into Bigfoot. I started it just out of a lifelong fascination with cryptids. I didn't have a crazy encounter or anything weird happen to me, and I don't think that you have to have something like that, just a healthy interest. And you've been doing it for 15 years, man. So you're obviously serious about it. Got our first question for you, if you don't mind. Dude from Texas asks, do y'all think once a haunted house is torn down, that energy or haunting goes away, or does it stay?
That's a great question. I've thought a lot about that, especially with a lot of locations, unfortunately, don't get the restoration and preservation they need and end up getting demolished, which is such a shame because they could be put to such better use and things like that. But I don't think that unless something is tied specifically to the land itself, that it stays around. I think personally that if it was tied specifically to the house, that um, it's not going to stay just stuck to the land.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you hear a lot of stories about like Indian burial grounds and and stuff like that, homes later on being built over stuff like that. I believe it has to have some kind of history. You know, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Um, the place that my wife works at now, it coincidentally enough, it's in the same area that I grew up in, a house that I grew up in, and the land that the property is owned. As kids, we used to call it the fairgrounds, and no one was allowed to go in the fairgrounds, but we would sneak in there and ride our dirt bikes and stuff like that. But no one was supposed to go in there because it was haunted, and there were devil worshippers and all that crap. You know that wasn't true. So it had that lore to it, and fast forward 30 years, somebody buys the property and they put this manufacturing plant over top of it. And my wife, she does the purchasing and stuff for that same plant. And there's a lot of Hispanics that work there. I think I've told this story before, but a few of those ladies have talked about seeing a small boy like climbing up the walls and
Oh, wow.
stuff. And it just makes me think all those stories that we were told as kids. Was there something to that? Because it was that ground, those grounds, were they haunted? Did something bad happen? It's fun to think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that keeps this thing interesting after 15 years is, I mean, you learn and you grow and you gain knowledge, but you never truly know what's going on. And
Yeah,
I think if you knew exactly what was going on, it probably wouldn't be as exciting as it is. So
very
having
true.
that little bit of unknown keeps it interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Now this is something that I ask every paranormal investigator that I have on, and uh, people that listen to the show are probably rolling their eyes about now, but it's something that's interesting to me. The one thing that has always stopped me from doing what you do, looking into these things and going out actually actively pursuing, looking for ghosts, is that fear of an attachment. I'm terrified that something will latch on to me and I'll bring it home, not necessarily for me, which that would suck, but if I bring it home to my kids, or my wife, that I couldn't live with that. Have you ever experienced anything like that, or any of your team members, or have you heard of any kind of attachment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's something that just is part of the what comes along with the territory. I mean, it's not something that happens every single time you go out, and there are ways to kind of protect yourself, and there are things you can do to help mitigate that. But I've definitely had stuff follow me home. Um, my ex girlfriend, who was in the group at the time, she would get the worst of it sometimes for whatever reason. They picked on her. She felt like a freezing cold hand touch her leg one time, and she thought it was me just like being mean and picking on her. And I wasn't even in the house. She would hear voices when I wasn't there and things like that. I've had stuff get knocked off the wall before at an old apartment I used to live in. Never anything physical to where it like hurt me or try to harm anybody. Just more activity. Usually, you either tell it to go away and leave us alone, or you just ignore it, and it kind of goes away after a little bit. So it's definitely happened. Sometimes it even happens with one of our investigations that we have on our YouTube series. We went to Prospect Place in Ohio, and the other gentleman in my group, Scott, he actually when he was off by himself, he told the spirits to mess with me when we were sleeping because we stayed there overnight, and he told them to mess with me and I forget what exact words he said, but something to the effects of when I was sleeping to show me what it used to be like when they were there. Well, I didn't have anything happen that night, but when we got back, he had like horrible nightmares for like the next 3 nights, like very vivid, intense nightmares. And I think they took his his suggestion and turned it back on himself. So I guess that's karma for him.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. We got a couple more questions for you, real quick. Miss Naoma Finn asked, "Have you ever experienced a haunting from a non-human entity, such as a dog or a cat?"
That's a good question. I've actually seen. It didn't make the episode, but one of the places we filmed at, I swore that I saw a cat. Like 100% thought it was a cat. Thought it wasn't. It wasn't completely abandoned, but it wasn't something that had people in it every single day. So I just assumed that a cat had got in, and I was like, "Oh, we got to get that cat out of here." And we looked everywhere, and it was a closed space. There's nowhere that it could have gotten out. And I swear on my life that I saw a cat go right behind one of our investigators' legs, and I have no clue what that was about. So yeah, I definitely think there can be spirit or animal spirits for sure.
Yeah, that is a good question. I've never considered that, and I've watched a lot of the episodes, the Ghost Hunters episodes, and like the different franchises and stuff. I don't ever recall any of them talking about any animals. That's really cool. I never thought of that. Kelly Shaw asks, "What's the spookiest location you've investigated?"
That's another really good question. I've been extremely fortunate to investigate some of the biggest locations in the U.S. I'm obviously from West Virginia, so we have some major locations here. We have the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which I've visited many times. We have the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville, which I've investigated and filmed at. I filmed one of my shows that appeared on the Travel Channel there. We have Sweet Springs Sanitarium down in southern West Virginia, which we've investigated. I've been to Waverly Hills Sanitarium, and just to name a few. We're actually getting ready to go to Ohio State Reformatory, where they film Shawshank next week. That'll be our first time there, so super excited about that. But probably the spookiest place I've ever been would probably either be a local place here in West Virginia called the Haymond House or the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas. One of those two. It'd be tough for me to pick which one was worse.
So, what made those two locations, or what made those stick out? If you don't mind sharing a couple of experiences from those places.
Yeah, absolutely. For the Sally House, that one it's been a few years. That one is the only place I've ever been physically harmed. I had like 3 scratches down the entire length of my forearm. I was in a room by myself. I wasn't touching anything. There obviously wasn't any other person in there. There were no animals in the house. I have no explanation on how it would be possible for me to get scratches on my arm. I saw and heard some crazy things there. So that place being physically touched like that always leaves an imprint. For the Heyman House, we've been there a bunch of times, and just the level of intelligence of the responses that we've received just continues every time we go back to grow, and we learn more and more about who may or may not be there and the responses we get. And then the first time we were ever there, we captured the most blood-curdling scream that we've ever experienced. We were all pretty sure that somebody had gotten like severely injured near the house because it was so loud, and we captured it on every single one of our cameras. But we searched everywhere in the neighborhood; there was nobody there, and that will always stick with me.
All right, got another question here for you. One of my actually best friends and member of my research group, Manimal Research, Dr. John Baranchuk, asks, says he knows someone who claims cannon fire hauntings on battlefields, I believe without human spirits presence. What are your thoughts, I guess, on, because I've heard of that too, being like on a battlefield and hearing cannon fire. Obviously, there's not a cannon there being shot. What are your thoughts on like those type of sounds?
So, I mean, the prevalent theory within the paranormal community, for the most part, is there's two types of hauntings. There's your intelligent hauntings, and then what's called residual hauntings. So, residual is basically an action or event that's imprinted in time and just kind of replays itself. So, I mean, you can imagine the amount of energy that was in those battlefields with the amount of soldiers there and just the pain and the torture and the agony and everything, the hate and just the fear, everything involved in that is going to leave a massive amount of energy. So something like that, if it just imprints itself on time, and then for whatever reason something triggers that, and it just kind of plays over and over on a loop, that's kind of what a residual is. It's kind of the same thing if somebody walked up and down the same set of stairs every night for 30 years, that energy is going to be imprinted in that spot. So that person or that haunting, they may not have any clue that you're there. It's just something that replays over again. So the cannon fire, the gunshots, that would be something that I would say would probably just be residual in nature.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that you talked about the differences between those two, because you hear that a lot, and that's what I was thinking, like a residual type thing when you hear that stuff. Because I live down here in South Tennessee. John lives in North Georgia, and in this area we have the Chickamauga battlefield, and it's one of the deadliest. Somebody correct me. It's one of the bloodiest, deadliest battles of the Civil War. And you might have heard of Old Green Eyes. Have you ever heard of
I
anyone talk?
have,
Yeah, that's kind of our claim to fame down here. But I've heard several people talk about hearing cannon fire. That's a really, really good question. I think you hit right on the head. Tea Time with Tiffany asks, I think this is a great question. Since you go back to these places more than once, do the spirits ever remember you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So some places that's a good thing. Some places that's not a good thing. Sometimes they don't necessarily like you. So they tend to remember you, and you tend to get a certain kind of reaction when you go back there, depending on whether they like you or don't like you. But a lot of times we'll get very specific answers related to us and related to who we are without us ever reintroducing ourselves and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think that if it's an intelligent haunting and they're familiar with you, that they can remember that.
Well, here's quite the compliment. Dr. John Baranchuk says, makes sense for the first time. Thanks. John, I've talked about it many times. I know he's probably sick of hearing me say it, but he's a great friend of mine. But John's the smartest man I've ever known personally. He has this ability, this talent to explain things to people that you just get. You understand, and not everybody has that ability. So that is quite a compliment coming from John.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Naoma here did some work for me. Said yes, I believe some 16,000 lives were lost in that battle, maybe more. Yeah, the Chickamauga battle.
Yeah, we're obviously in West Virginia, so we had a lot of the Civil War battlefields here, and then we're like 2.5 hours from Gettysburg. So I mean, I've been to Gettysburg, and it's a whole nother level. So I mean, yeah, it's hard to believe some of that stuff actually happened.
Yeah, yeah. Now, have you ever seen an apparition? Oh, you mentioned the cat. Have you ever seen like a full body person apparition?
I've seen like full shadow figures to where I could see like the outline of a person and see features, but I've never seen a full body apparition to where I could see like facial details and to where it looked like a physical living person. That's one thing that I mean, I guess everybody who investigates wants to see that. That's the holy grail. I mean, I've seen so much that uh, I'm very fortunate, but that's one thing that I've never seen that I would love to at some point.
Another question. The audience is on top of it tonight. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. You guys make my job so much easier when y'all are the ones firing off the questions. But another one of my good friends and Manimal member, Mr. Kevin Jones, asked. Well, first he said he thought he was the smartest man I ever met. But Kevin, you're a close second, buddy. But Kevin asked, "Do you feel the presence, or is there another way that you know something is near you?"
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, that's one thing that everybody who I talk to that wants to get into the field. One of the first things that I try to talk to them about is before you get into all of the equipment and before you get into all of the experiments and things like that, is to learn to use your body as the main tool and get the energy. Personally, I'm don't ever claim to be psychic, and I don't ever claim to be a medium or anything like that. But when I'm in a location and stuff's about to happen or there's something around me, I get a real sharp pressure on my temple, and I mean, you can go check out our web series. Usually, when I get that pressure, something either happens right then or happens soon after. So, personally, that's kind of the cue for me. Now, other people, it might be something totally different. You may get like a cold chill, or you may get something to uh, whatever it is. It differs from person to person. Uh, but for me, when I get that pressure, there's a pretty good chance that there's something around us.
You think you always get that pressure? Do you feel like that's a pretty common thing?
I mean, not every single time that something happens, but usually if I get that pressure, then something's about to go down one way or another.
We had another question here for you. Tea time with Tiffany. I had it and I lost it. Bear with me. Okay, right here. What's your opinion on the Gettysburg location?
I mean, I've only been there like during the day. I've never done like anything paranormal to investigate it. I've just done like the historical tours. But even my ex's father, who's a pastor who doesn't really believe in the paranormal at all, he even says that there's a different energy there. I mean, he's a huge history buff and a civil. He does reenactments and things like that. So for him to admit that there's a different energy there, I mean that really has to say something. So I mean, there's so much that happened there, and if there's ever a recipe for a haunting, that's right up there at the top. So um, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be haunted. Like I said, I've never personally experienced anything there, but I feel like if there was going to be somewhere that's haunted, that would be one of the places.
I absolutely agree with you so much. Violence. War is violent. It really is so much bloodshed and death and everything, and it's a great opportunity for it. Do You mentioned not being psychic earlier? Psychics are something that a lot of groups tend to use. Do you guys have a psychic or a medium or anything, or have you ever had one that you use in your investigations?
We don't know, and I'm not completely opposed to the idea. I do think that there are people who have gifts, whether that be psychic or be a medium or be sensitive. Um, we don't have anybody that we use on a regular basis. I'm pretty skeptical as far as it goes with that, so it takes a lot for me to buy in and trust that. I think a lot of people kind of say they are, and then they just make broad general statements, or they just state facts that are easily accessible if you just do a little bit of research. So it usually takes something pretty specific for me to believe it. But I definitely think those people are out there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So that's something that you would be up to maybe trying in the future.
Yeah, if we found the right person and the right fit, absolutely. I think that would be something that we would definitely be open to for sure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your group. Did you found the group? Are you the founder?
Co-founder, yeah, myself and like I said, my cousin Rich, we founded the group in 2007. He kind of, like I said, kind of fell off as far as the investigating goes. So we went through so many iterations over the years, members who came and left and gone. Right now, it's myself and my team member Scott. We've been doing this for going on 5 years now, just or both of us being in the group, and we launched the Forgotten Relics web series that we have on YouTube. So we're super excited about that, and yeah.
So the name of your group again, West Virginia Paranormal Investigations,
Yes.
and that is also the name of your YouTube channel, correct?
Yeah, you can search West Virginia Paranormal Investigations, or it's just youtube.com/WVPara, WVPARA. Or you can also search for the show title, which is Forgotten Relics.
Forgotten Relics. Okay, so that's the name of the YouTube show.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, very cool. Now, you guys, I looked at your channel a little while ago, and you've got quite a few. You're up there with about as many subs as I've got, or you got a little bit more, don't you? How many do you guys have?
I think we're closing in on 1,300, just a little bit shy of 1,300. We've really only been doing it consistently for about a year and a half or so. I'd like to get a lot more consistent, but I mean, it's hard when it's not your full-time gig. I wish we could do it full-time, obviously, but
Yeah.
Scott and I both have full-time jobs, so we fit it in when we can. But yeah, we're super excited about the product. We've put a ton of work into it, learning the filmmaking side of it. We do all of the filming ourselves. I do all the editing myself. So putting in the time and effort to learn the behind the scenes of shooting B-roll and flying the drone and editing and just everything that goes into it. We're super proud. If you go back and watch the beginning episodes to the most recent episodes, it's such a massive leap forward, and we're just going to continue to grow that.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's a lot of fun having these channels and going back to the very beginning, first videos, and then seeing where you're at now and how much you progress over the years. I know you go back to my first few, and God, they were a train wreck, man. I was doing them in the middle of my living room, and sound quality was terrible. And I've come this far now. I've got a little studio in the house, and it's really cool looking back and seeing how much you progress. Now, on an investigation, a typical investigation, you guys go out. What all kind of equipment do you take with you?
We have just about every type of equipment that you can think of. We've invested a lot of our time and money over the years into acquiring equipment, and then we've also taught ourselves how to build our own equipment as well. So we do a lot of custom built stuff for ourselves. But all of the mainstays. I mean, we have the voice recorders. Obviously, we have the EMF meters. We have thermal camera. We have the SLS camera. We have all of the spirit boxes. We have portals that we build ourselves. We have spirit boxes we build ourselves. REM pods. I mean, if you can think of it, if it's something that's out there, we probably have some version of it.
Now, what is a spirit box? I've heard you guys talk about these things quite often. I don't think I've ever really asked anyone to really break down what a spirit box is.
So the most basic version of a spirit box was a hacked radio. Basically, that when you press the scan button, normally a radio would just scan to the next station and then stop. Well, the first version of the spirit box, they stopped it, or they made it keep scanning. So it would just jump from station to station to station with very little time in between. So basically, it created like a loop of white noise to where, in theory, the spirit could use that as a way to kind of make it easier for them to speak. Now, spirit boxes are way more intricate. People are using a lot of technology as far as reverse speech or reverse scanning, adding white noise, adding a lot of reverb, adding echo, just things that really take it from your simple little thing to a really intricate piece of equipment.
Yeah, actually, right on cue here, John Baranchuk asked about a question about a spirit box. Says, no offense intended. How can you trust the spirit boxes that produce word responses? It's programmed by humans. Do you understand that program on a fundamental level and how it translates energy into words? And I can honestly say he does not mean offense. So I hope you don't take offense to that. That's John's just, these are the kind of questions you get from John.
Trust me, you're going to have to go way worse than that to offend me. It's going to be hard to do that. No, that's actually a great question. So, what he's referring to is a little bit different than a spirit box. It's the main version of that. There's different versions, but the main one that people see, like especially in like Ghost Adventures and those shows, is called an ovilus. So basically, the idea behind the ovilus is it has a word bank. I can't remember the exact number of words. It's somewhere like between 500 and 1,000 words that it has stored in it. And the idea is it can pull environmental data, so EMF, barometric pressure, and to be 100% honest with you, he's spot on. I don't know the exact details of all of it. I've researched it before, but I can't remember the specifics of it. But the idea is that the spirit can manipulate those environmental data to pick a specific word to respond to you. We have an ovilus. I use it every once in a blue moon just because it's kind of a cool thing that people like to see. And I pull it out for like a public investigation because people have seen it on Ghost Adventures and they want to see it in person. I couldn't tell you the last time I used it on one of our actual investigations because I don't really trust it all that much. It would have to be a very, very specific response to a question that doesn't have a general answer. So, I mean, you can kind of especially if you've ever watched Ghost Adventures, Zach will take an answer and he'll weave it into the history somehow, and he'll make these things connect that are like so far apart that there should be no connection, but he'll find a way to connect them. So we don't do that. We don't reach for those answers. It would have to be so specific to a question that couldn't be like that for me to trust it. And I don't even know. I can't tell you the last time that I've experienced that with something along those lines.
Okay, what is your opinion on these ghost apps that you can get on your phone? Personally, those of you, I mean, that close friends of mine that have been out on investigations, y'all know what I think about them. I think they're crap. These apps that just give out words, you know what I'm talking about? You
Oh
familiar
yeah,
with those?
yeah. I'm right there with you. I don't trust anything that is like that. I mean, yes, your phone has a ton of sensors, and yes, your phone can do a lot of things, but it's not going to all of a sudden become this specific device that's going to detect spirits or anything like that. So I don't really trust any apps. There are a couple of apps that are more like audio based, not the ones that have like pre-recorded words in it, but just that has like the bed of noises that will create that white noise effect. But other than that, we don't ever use a phone during an investigation.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Um, Someone that's wanting to maybe get started in this field and start doing it recreationally and on the side, like I guess how everyone gets their start. What would you recommend someone buying to make their start in this field?
You really don't have to go out and sink a bunch of money into it like some people kind of lead you to believe. I mean, like I said, honestly, if you're just in it to for your own personal experience and you're not trying to document it or anything like that, you can go out with almost nothing. I mean, a pretty basic voice recorder that you've learned how to use and understand what might be a false positive and what might be an actual EVP or electronic voice phenomenon, something that you know and understand. I mean, that's really it. I mean, if you want to document it, a pretty basic Sony camera that has the good night vision, I mean, you can be out on an investigation, I mean, legitimately for 150, $200 and have everything you need to go out and have a good time and document it. Now, obviously, if you want to go out and start a show or like a web series or go out and do like the live investigation, stuff like that, then yeah, then there's a lot more specific equipment that goes along with that. But if you're just going out to kind of experience it for yourself, you don't need all the bells and whistles that some people have.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. Definitely agree with that. Um, let's, if you don't mind, let's hear some of the specific like encounters that you personally have had. Do you have any that stick out to you that just really, really creeped you out?
Trust me, 15 years of doing this, I got stories for days. Um, we've been very fortunate, like I said, to visit a lot of very very prominent locations, and most of those have lived up to the billing for the most part, and I've had a ton of experiences. Um, just off the top of my head, the first one that I ever experienced personally was at an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, and like I said, I'm from West Virginia, so when you say the middle of nowhere, it's way out there. Um, we were this was one of our very first investigations ever. Uh, we were getting set up. We weren't even investigating yet. My cousin Rich, who I mentioned earlier, um, was in another room. Well, I heard the door that went upstairs. I heard it unlock and then relock, like latch. So I just assumed that he had went upstairs to put a voice recorder and a camera up there. So I needed to ask him something. So I opened the door and I said, "Hey, Rich, up the steps." And at that moment, he actually came in a different door on the other side of the house. I was like, "Yeah." So he said he came around the corner and my face just went white because obviously I thought he was upstairs and he wasn't. So the door had opened and then reclosed with nobody else in the area. That was one of the first times where I really kind of, it cemented in my head that, man, there really might be something out there. That same location, the first EVP or electronic voice phenomena we ever captured, we were told there was a spirit of a little boy there, so we were trying to interact with him. We had some cars and some trains on the floor, and we were trying to get him to go play with those. And when we played back the audio, there was a very high pitched, squeaky voice that said, "But I don't want your toy," as a direct response to our question. It still gives me chills just talking about it today.
That's
So that place got us off on the right foot for sure. So those are the early ones. Like I said, I've been touched before, being scratched always is something that, like I said, sticks with you. One thing that we do a lot now during our investigations is what's called the Estes method. The Estes method is basically the receiver is wearing noise canceling headphones while listening to a spirit box. They're also blindfolded, so they don't know what's going on around them. So with a normal spirit box session, what happens is when you ask a question and you're listening to the spirit box, naturally your brain is trying to pick out those words that answer your question. It's called confirmation bias. So there's always a little bit of a lean toward, yeah, you're going to hear what you want to hear. With the Estes method, you take a lot of that out because the person who's answering has no idea what you're asking and no idea if what they're saying is corresponding to your answers. So one of the first episodes that we filmed for Forgotten Relics was at Sweet Spring Sanitarium in southern West Virginia. Well, I was a receiver and Scott was asking questions. Scott heard, unbeknownst to me, he heard the voice of a little girl in the room, which obviously freaked him out. Unbeknownst to us at the time, we actually captured an EVP on our camera that said "Mama." And then within 30 seconds, I heard through the spirit box, I heard a little girl say "Mama." So within like a 1 minute time frame, all of this happened, and we had no idea. Like Scott knew what he heard, I knew what I heard. Neither of us knew that we caught the EVP. But then when we went back and listened to all of this, and we saw all three parts together, it kind of blew our mind. So that was unbelievable. probably the most recent one that kind of sticks out in the episode that we released last month. We used the Ouija board for the first time on the channel,
Hmm.
and I've always been skeptical with the Ouija board. I always just kind of assume that whoever else is doing it is moving it with me. I was doing the similar thing with the Estes while Scott was asking questions. We were doing the Ouija at the same time, so I had no clue what was going on. We were getting responses to Scott's question. I had no idea, and he took his hands off of the planchette, and I swear on my life, I was not touching that planchette strong enough to move it on my own. But we got it on video. It's moving, and I'm the only one touching it. So that was the first time we're ever like actually thought there might be a little bit of something to the Ouija. So those are just a few that stick out. But man, I have so many more stories to tell. I love to tell old stories like that.
Yeah, you brought up the Ouija board without me having to ask, and I usually try to ask about people's experiences with Ouija board just because they creep me out. Um, so that's you said that was the only time you guys have ever used one.
I've used them. I've used them a lot of times. That was the first time we ever used it on the YouTube series. Uh, like I said, I've never had any bad experiences with it. Knock on wood. Um, Personally, but like I said, I've always taken it kind of with a grain of salt because I just assumed that somebody else was moving it or something
Yeah,
else was going on. Uh, I don't know. I could go either way depending on who's using it. If it's not me personally using it, I'll completely throw it out. I mean, not that I don't trust whoever's using it, but it takes a lot for me to kind of buy in on something like that. Now, I've heard a bunch of horror stories from people who have used it and had terrible experiences, so I understand people's hesitancy to use it. Like I said, we've been pretty lucky. We've never had anything bad happen. So every once in a while, we bust it out and see what happens.
yeah. All right, I got another question from John. Have you encountered any demons? Can you tell can you tell that story? And do you have any concerns if it might impact your own passing to the next plane? That's interesting.
Yeah, you guys have some awesome questions. This is fantastic. I definitely believe in demons. I grew up in a very Christian household. I have my two uncles who are pastors. My parents went to church, so I very much believe in demons as an idea. Now, are they as prevalent as what people say? No, absolutely not. I mean, it's very clickbaity. People will put demon in literally every title of every video to try to get people to click on it.
Yeah.
Uh, so, I mean, I feel like 99.9% of encounters that people say are demons are not demons. The only place that I've ever been that I think might have been, and I don't even think that for sure it was. Um, the only reason I think it might have been is because I got physically ill to the point where I had to leave, and I went outside and got sick, and that just takes a lot of energy to do that to somebody. So again, I don't know that it was demonic, but it was a very strong energy, whatever it was. Do I feel like that's going to affect me going forward? I mean, it depends on who you talk to. I mean, a lot of people in the Christian faith are going to tell you every single thing you talk to is a demon. There's no such thing as ghosts. Everything's a demon.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're going out there is a sin and blasphemous every time you go investigate. I mean, I don't believe that at all, obviously, or I wouldn't be doing it. I feel like I have a very strong personal belief and personal connection, and that's what I've based my faith on. Excuse me. So I feel very confident in that, and I think that is the most important thing is your personal relationship, and when it comes down to it, that's what really matters.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great question or yeah, great question and a great response to it. Very, very well said. All right, we've got about 10 more minutes. JJ, if you got a couple more encounters or one or however many that jump out at you, that we love hearing the spooky stuff, man. So if you got anything else, but before we get out of here, we'd love to hear
Oh
it.
yeah, like I said, I got tons of stories. um, I'm gonna try to run through some of the other episodes that we have out there. Um, we've been, like I said, been to a lot of places. One of the places that we filmed recently that hasn't been released yet, um, that I'm editing currently, is called the Old Franklin County Jail in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. It's getting ready to drop next week. Um, we were actually doing that Estes method I was just talking about, and we were talking to what we think were some of the prisoners there. We were up on a second tier balcony, and we were hearing noises. Scott was listening. He had the headphones and the blindfold on, so he didn't know what was going on. I heard a noise downstairs, and I said, "Was that you?" And it said, "Yeah, downstairs." So I was like, "Oh." So I stood up to look over the balcony, and as soon as I stood up, it said, "Push him." So I think I was threatened to be murdered by a ghost on that investigation. I'm not 100% sure, but luckily nothing pushed me over the edge. But I definitely sat back down and did not get close to the edge for the rest of the investigation. Um, uh, the penitentiary in Moundsville is another very prominent place in West Virginia. Like I said, I filmed one of the shows that I was on for the Travel Channel there. Um, we were in one of the cells um, at the very end where they kept the worst of the worst. It was the isolation cells. Um, we were kind of taunting, which I don't normally taunt, but it was a prison and they weren't the best people in the world. So I feel like every once in a while, depending on the situation, you can kind of be a little more aggressive. Um, well, apparently they didn't like that. We were on the bottom tier. The two tiers above us were both completely blocked off. You physically couldn't get up there. They were chained off. You could not go up there. Well, the cell door above us slammed so hard that we physically felt our cell shake. So whatever it was slammed the door so hard that we felt it move down below. Then we went back later on and we listened to the recorder. And right before that happened, we captured a voice that said they're down here. So it sounded like there were a couple of inmates kind of trying to chase us out of there. Um,
Now, do on any of your investigations, do you? I think you spoke briefly about that you don't like to provoke spirits, but do you find that that could possibly be a good trick to use to get a response?
it can be depending on the location and who you're trying to interact with. Obviously, if you're in like a mental hospital where people were treated poorly, you don't want to go in there and kind of antagonize and provoke. That's not going to get the response that you want, and that's just not fair to the spirits either, in my opinion. But when you go into a prison, I mean, prison is all about just being male and being macho and being top dog and who's in charge and the pecking order and all that stuff. So when you go in and you kind of challenge them and be boastful and call them out and you can't do this and I don't believe you can do this or that. Sometimes in that kind of environment, that can definitely get more of a response for sure.
The very first episode that I did when taking over as host for Paranormal Odyssey, I interviewed this a couple of members of this paranormal investigation team out of here in Tennessee. They're called Wrestling with Ghosts, and one of the things that Vinny was the guy that I had on, and one of the things that he talked about that I thought was just so cool and awesome was he talked about being and the name of the penitentiary escapes me. It's the one where James Earl Ray was held, the man who shot Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
But they were doing an investigation there, and they were actually in James Earl Ray's cell, and they played the "I Have a Dream" speech, and I thought that was just so brilliant.
Yeah.
And he talked about the stuff that they got from doing that. You guys go back and listen to that episode. It is my very first one that I did here, and I just thought that was so cool with the response that they got from it, and that just got me thinking. Is that something that a lot of paranormal investigators do? And if not, why not? Because you're there to get a response, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea. Everything is very specific to the location and who may or may not be there. So, yeah, I mean, it may not make sense for every location, but for certain places, depending on what happened there, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, Playing
Naoma got
music.
it through for me. It's Brushy Mountain. Is
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, Playing old like taps music or playing old Civil War hymns or I mean anything that's specifically related to that or in a prison if it's something related to that specific inmate. Absolutely, anything that you can kind of connect with them or trigger something in them to kind of interact with you. That yeah, it's a great idea.
All right. JJ, if you don't mind, take a couple of minutes, buddy, and tell everybody where they can find you, all of the platforms, all of your stuff. Just promote yourself and your group and your show and all that good stuff.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. So definitely, please go check out our YouTube page. That's what we're kind of focusing our energy on right now. Like I said, you can search West Virginia Paranormal Investigations. It might be easier. It's just www.youtube.com/WVPARA, WVPARA. We just released an episode last month, and then we have an episode coming out next Friday. So we're super excited about that. We also have a Facebook page, which we're really active on, West Virginia Paranormal Investigations on Facebook. If you like live investigations, we do live stream a lot of our investigations when we're not filming. So we get a lot of interaction, kind of like this show, except during an actual investigation, which is really cool to kind of bring people in and let them be a part of the investigation. We're going to start doing more live stream stuff. So if you're interested in that, please check us out on Facebook. We're also on Instagram at WV Para Investigations. We're on TikTok, which is the same name at WV Para Investigations. We're not use those as much. Mostly it's just Facebook and YouTube are our big kind of places where we interact with most people. So please check those out. Subscribe if you can. That would help us out a ton. Drop a like on Facebook and come say hello.
All right. You got one new sub, Miss
All
Naoma.
right.
She went and
Awesome.
subscribed. Guys, y'all head over to the channel and let's get them a few more subs over there. And JJ, if you would, buddy, send me links to everything that you want shared, because every one of these interviews that I do, I take the audio from it and upload to podcast, and we'll reach a lot more people through the podcast than we do here on YouTube. And I'll also put those links on our website as well. I'm a little bit behind on getting the episodes updated. I might work on that tonight, but yeah, send me whatever links you want shared and I will get them shared. Everybody be just a click away from checking you guys out.
I really appreciate that. That helps us out a lot.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. No problem at all. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks everybody for the great questions. We had a lot of really good interaction, which is always fun. So thanks everybody for tuning in. If you have any questions, come check us out. Hit me up on, like I said, Facebook or YouTube, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, buddy. You enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
All right, guys. I love you guys. Y'all are so awesome. The questions tonight were great. They're getting so much better. We went little while there without getting a whole lot of questions, but you guys have been killing it lately. I appreciate that. Thank you guys so very much for being so active. And as always, you're very respectful, not only to myself, but to our guests. And I really, really appreciate that. Thank you to Tea Time with Tiffany, as always, ma'am, staying on top of the chat, moderator extraordinaire. Little hint, teaser, Tiffany and I have been working on a little side project that will be coming out very, very soon. So be looking for that. Everybody else that was in here, thank you so much for hanging out and spending your Friday evening with us. I appreciate that very much. Guys, y'all take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next time.